So you're missing some teeth. Or maybe you have an extraction coming up where you're going to be missing some teeth and you're wondering, what options do I have to replace these missing teeth? Let's talk about that on today's episode of FLOSSUP.
Floss it up, floss it up, floss it up, floss it, floss it up, floss it up, floss it up, floss it, floss it up, floss it up, floss it up, floss it. If you don't floss every day, you bound to get decay.
FLOSSUP. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about the three main options you have to replace missing teeth. Option number 1, a complete or partial denture. Option number 2, a bridge. Option number 3, an implant. Let's go. Option number 1, complete or partial dentures. Before I jump in to talk about these bad boys, let's first talk about some of the steps that we take to make them, and let me show you what they look like. Typically, there are 5 appointments for a partial or a complete denture. Appointment number 1 is something called preliminary impressions. This is where we talk to you about the steps that are involved, and then we take these impressions of your top and bottom teeth or gums, and it can look something like this. So here's an example. This patient here has no teeth on the top, but there's some teeth on the bottom. We pour up those preliminary impressions into these stone models, and we use these stone models to make something called a custom tray. This tray is custom made for your mouth. We use this custom tray to do appointment number 2. Appointment number 2 is called a final impression. We use custom trays. These are trays that are customly made for a specific patient's mouth. We take very accurate impressions called the final impression. We send that off to the lab, and that leads us off to appointment number 3. At appointment number 3, we use these things called occlusal rims, which look like this, and they're made out of wax. We place them in your mouth, we mark the middle of your face, we capture your bite, we also do your smile line, we have you say a few things to see if they're too far forward or backwards. A lot of different information is gathered with these occlusal rims. Also at this appointment, it's a very, very important appointment because you're going to be picking the shape and the color of your teeth that you want for this partial or for this denture. It's a really good if you bring in some photos of what your teeth used to look like so that we can send that off to the lab and the lab can match up the shape and potentially the shade, the color of your teeth. So try to bring in some old photos if you don't have any teeth, or if you do have some teeth, the dentist might take some photos of your mouth to send to the lab to give them a reference as to what shape and shade your teeth are so they can match them up. Now that brings us over to appointment number 4, an aesthetic try-in. All of that information that you gathered at appointment number 3 is now put into the wax. So you have the teeth, the color that you picked, all that stuff is all in the wax. We're gonna place it in the mouth. You're gonna take a look. You're gonna smile, look in the mirror. You're gonna see if you like the shape, the color, the way everything kind of comes together. If you're happy with the way they look and feel, this is where you will sign a consent form that says, hey, I'm happy with it. Let's take it from a wax stage and let's make it into something permanent. We send that off to the lab. The lab will change it from a wax stage to a permanent stage. And at appointment number 5 is called the delivery. We give it to you. We place it in there. We have you bite down. We check your bite, make sure everything is fine. We practice with you on how to take them out and how to place them back in. We talk to you about how to manage them, how to keep them clean. We also give you some goodies, denture adhesive, cleaning supplies, all that good stuff. Now that you know what complete and partial dentures look like, and you know some of the steps, basically the 5 appointments that we do to make them, let's talk about some of the pros and cons of them. Let's talk about some of the good things about partial and complete dentures. Number 1, most dental insurances will cover a complete or partial denture. Number 2, you can replace more than one tooth or all of your teeth if you want to. Number 3, this is usually the least expensive option. So if your insurance doesn't cover it, this is going to be your least expensive option as compared to implants and bridges. Now let's talk about some of the downsides to complete and partial dentures. First, I'm going to start with complete dentures. Complete dentures, if you don't have a lot of bone support, these guys have a hard time staying in. Their retention is really hard. Now, this typically applies towards mainly the bottom. So let me explain that to you. The bottom here, You see this space here with your tongue is? If the bone support is not that good, your tongue is going to be flopping around as you're talking, as you're eating, whatever. It'll tend to flick this denture up, and you have a hard time keeping these bottom dentures in because there's not enough support to keep them in there, not enough bone down there. For the upper, it's a little different. For the upper, you have a palate. This palate here helps create a really good suction, and these guys tend to stay in really well. That's why most patients will typically like their complete denture on the upper, but hate their complete denture on the bottom, because this bottom guy will tend to flop around and move out, and they have a hard time keeping it in there. Now, if you don't have enough bone, and let's say these guys are moving around a lot, you'll have to use Fixodent or a different type of brand of some type of denture adhesive that you have to put in there. It can be very sticky and gooey, and that's why some patients hate having to put that stuff in there to keep these dentures in. So if you don't have a lot of bone support, these guys might be a problem for you. Complete and partial dentures can sometimes be very bulky. Imagine having this big old thing up there covering up your gums and having your lips kind of sticking out, and it makes it hard to say certain words just because it's so bulky and big, and it covers up a lot of the real estate inside your mouth. Same thing for partials. They can feel really bulky along the cheek, and it can take some getting used to. And lastly, with complete and partial dentures, you have to remove these guys after you're done eating, rinse them out, put them back in. At night before bed, you have to leave these guys out. Don't leave them in the mouth when you go to sleep. This can be a downside because some patients hate having to think about needing to remove these guys after they're done eating or before they go to bed. That's the downside with these guys, is they're removable. You have to take them out. So that's complete and partial dentures for you. Before I jump into the next option, let me throw out this word for you: a flipper. A flipper, also known as a partial, can replace a missing tooth. It's mainly used for aesthetics, just for looks. If you remember at the beginning of the video, I was missing that front tooth. Well, I can replace that front tooth for looks with something called a flipper. I'll discuss how a flipper can be used for implants later on down the road here. Option number 2, a bridge. I want you to think of a bridge as being exactly that, a bridge. Island number 1, island number 2, a body of water right in the middle. How do you get from island 1 to island 2? You go across the bridge. Same concept in the mouth. If you're missing a tooth here, but you have 2 teeth next to that missing space, you can have a bridge made. And what I mean by that is we would take this tooth, shave it down, make it nice and small so that we can fit a crown over it. And then we shave this tooth down, put a crown over that one. And then we have a fake crown sitting right in the middle where that tooth is missing, and we connect all of those guys together. That's a bridge. It looks something like this. Here's what the teeth look like before the crown is placed on, and here's what the teeth look like after the crowns are placed on. Now let's talk about the good and the bad things about bridges. 1, they're really good at replacing missing teeth, as you saw here. And you can get some really good results where you can match the teeth shades and make it look very, very natural. This is also something that can be made in-house. Some dental clinics have something called CEREC, where they can actually mill out and make these crowns for you in the actual clinic, and you can have it done the same exact day. We'll talk about CEREC crowns and the amazing things you can do with CEREC in a later video. Another good thing about bridges is that you can potentially tackle 2 birds with 1 stone. And what I mean by that is, let's go back to the scenario of the 2 islands. Let's say these islands have a lot of repairs done to them already. You have really big fillings in these teeth. If you shave them down and put a crown over both of them, you are now protecting them 360 degrees. At the same time, you're also able to add a tooth right in the middle there and connect all 3 together. You kind of get 2 birds with 1 stone because you're protecting the 2 teeth here, and you're also adding a tooth here to replace that missing tooth that you had or didn't have. Now let's talk about some of the downsides to bridges. Most dental insurances will not pay for a bridge. Let me first bring up a model so I can talk to you guys about these guys, because I'm going to refer to something called anchor teeth. Anchor teeth are essentially the teeth that anchor the bridge. They're the islands. So for this patient here, they're missing 6 teeth here in the front. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a bridge that's going to connect from this tooth all the way to this tooth here. These two teeth here are called anchor teeth. Crown here, fake crowns all the way across in the front here. Now what happens is if you have trouble keeping these guys clean, these anchor crowns, if one of these fails, the whole unit, the whole bridge is going to fail. All it takes is one of these anchor crowns to go bad, and then the whole unit is going to become mobile and it'll eventually need to come out. Another downside to these guys is that we are asking these two anchor crowns to make up all of the forces. They're going to take on all the pressure from all of these 6 missing teeth. Because we're adding these 6 crowns here in the front, we're asking these 2 teeth to take on all of the biting pressure that comes from those guys. So anytime somebody bites into an apple or a carrot or anything crunchy or hard right here, what that's going to do is it's going to add pressure to these guys here. The longer the span, meaning the longer the space in between the 2 anchor teeth, the higher chances are that that bridge is going to fracture. And lastly, if you have a healthy tooth here and a healthy tooth here, why would you want to shave them down and remove all that healthy tooth structure from both of these guys just so you can replace this one tooth right here? I don't know. For me, I'm more on the conservative side. I like to keep my teeth nice and healthy. I don't want to have to take away healthy tooth structure from both of these teeth here just so I can put a crown there and to connect a fake crown to it to make that bridge. That's a downside to me. If these are happy, healthy teeth, I'm leaving them alone. I'm going to look into either putting an implant here or a partial here in that missing space. On that note, let's talk about implants. Option number 3, dental implants. These guys are amazing, but there are some downsides to them, and we're going to talk about them here in a little bit. But first, let's talk about who can place an implant. How do you get an implant? First, you can have an implant placed by an oral surgeon. So if your general dentist does not place dental implants, they will give you a referral to see an oral surgeon, or you may be given a referral to see a periodontist, which is a bone and gum specialist. Both the oral surgeon and the periodontist will place your implants if your general dentist does not place implants in their office. On that note, you can have your implant placed by your general dentist if they offer that service. A lot of general dentists love implants. They love being able to bring that service to their patients. Therefore, they do an extensive amount of training just to be able to bring this service to you. So take advantage of that. A great organization that does implant training is called Implant Pathway. These guys are amazing at training the next generation of dentists and placing implants in their general office. You can get your fillings, cleanings, implants, bridges, all that stuff done in one office. How awesome is that? Now let's talk about the good and the bad. The good. Implants are awesome because they are fixed. They're stuck in your mouth. You don't have to worry about taking these guys out at night, anything like that. Another good thing about implants is that they can be used to secure a very floppy, complete denture. So if your denture on the top or the bottom is moving around too much, you can use implants to anchor it in. Here's what that looks like here. You got some implants, you have the denture, which has these pre-cut holes inside of them, and you pop the denture in and it snaps in on these implants, and now that sucker ain't moving. It's stuck. Another good thing about implants is you can use them as a bridge. You can place an implant, and connect those guys together with crowns and have a nice solid bridge that's anchored in by those 2 implants or however many implants you need. Now let's talk about some of the downsides to implants. The most obvious, it's costly. It can be very expensive to get these implants placed. Another thing is there's a healing period. Typically when we place implants, we'll do the procedure where we place the implant in the bone, and we will wait about 3 months for your bone to start growing into the grooves of the implant to solidify and make sure that implant is nice and stable. Then you come back and we place a crown on that implant. Then you're done. So that waiting game of 3 months sometimes can be a downside to some patients. Now there are options if you are waiting the 3 months for your bone to kind of grow into the grooves of the implant. And do you remember when I threw out that term flipper? Well, a flipper can be placed over where an implant sits while you're waiting for everything to heal up. Another downside about implants is that bone level is very, very important. You have to have enough bone to support an implant to be screwed in or to be placed into that bone. Those are the three options to replace missing teeth. 1, partial denture or complete denture. 2, a bridge. 3, an implant. If you do have missing teeth or a missing tooth, I highly suggest you look into one of those three options to replace them. And the reason behind that is because if you don't, you can have something called super eruption happen. It looks like this. It's where your tooth continues to erupt, meaning coming out of the bone, because there's nothing to stop it. It doesn't have another tooth to stop it. When you replace those missing teeth, now you're adding a stopping point for that tooth so you can stop the super eruption. If you do have super eruption, your root can become exposed. It can increase your sensitivity to hot and cold, to sweets, to foods. If you recall from episode number 4 where I talked about the 3 main layers of the tooth, this gets really close to your pulp, the nerve of the tooth, heightening all of those hot and cold senses. So definitely look into replacing those missing teeth. I hope this information was helpful. Again, I'm here to make you feel more confident and comfortable the next time you step into a dental office. If you have any questions, or if you have some topics that you want me to discuss, please feel free to send me a message or just simply comment below. Also, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to my channel so I can make sure to get this information out there to everybody who needs to hear it. As always, thank you. Floss up.
Floss it up, floss it up, floss it up,